Oh, okay.
So you'll
Well,
tell me where we're up to.
I wasn't, I was learning with Itcha, and he left off on Nun Aleph Amud Base, Rav Yehud, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, where it's about the off, the
Okay,
oif.
so we'll start from there. Okay, geweldig. How did it
Is
go
that okay?
yesterday?
Where you left off, obviously, probably the next lot, right?
Yeah, but not a big deal. We'll go back.
Okay.
How did it go yesterday?
It was fine. It's fine.
Are
I
you
missed
still
part of it.
are you still letting me come back?
What's that?
Are you still going to let me come back?
Of course.
I
Of
figured
course. Well,
after
you'll
Itcher
have to.
Shashir, nobody's going to want me back.
No, no, no. It's okay. We enjoyed it. It was very nice. It was very
Baruch
Chaimidish.
Baruch Hashem. Okay, so let's start with the oif. So we're talking about when an animal gets banged up. There's a comment of Nisrasku Evarov. And Nisrasku Evarov is it gets smashed, its limbs get smashed to bits. So the question was, how about an oif? An oif would only require a much lighter type of bang in order for its Evarim to fall apart.
Okay.
Now, if
When
anybody,
you say smash to bits, like it doesn't have to be to bits, though. You
no,
just,
no, it's not even apparent on the outside.
yeah, yeah.
And um, if anybody ever went water skiing, took a fall, they would know that hitting water at a pretty high velocity feels like
Yeah.
banging into something very hard. So the
Right.
Gemara says as follows: For some reason, a bird fell out of the air, stopped flying, and it came smashing down onto the water. Even Shashat, now we're concerned that it might have this issue of Nizrasko Evarov. So the litmus test is even Shashat Malakamasai, if the bird can swim the length of its body. So let's say the bird is 12 inches long. If the bird could swim for 12 inches, dayoi, that would verify that the animal is kosher. That's only if the bird is swimming upstream against the current. If the bird moves 12 inches with the current, that doesn't prove that the bird propelled itself. Rather, Mayahu, the Ashbalu, he was just going with the current. Maya Kaimi, if it's still water, it's not, doesn't have a current, then less than if the animal moves its body length, in this case 12 inches, we would know that it's verified that the animal propelled it. What if the bird was swimming downstream, but they were wooden floating, little pieces of wood floating in the water? The kadme, and the bird swam faster than the wood. That proves that it was because the bird propelled itself, and not because of the current. How about glima matiach? What if you have a baguette spread out very taut across two posts, so that fabric is so stretched, so tight, it's like a brick wall. If a bird hits it, that it's going to have this rascally. What if it's not stretched so tightly? It's bouncy a little bit. If the baguette is folded in half, where you can't possibly stretch it so taut, that's not hard. You're not chodesh. What if it gets caught in a net? And the knots of the net are very close together, so likely it hit the hard knot. You're worried about this but if the knots are far apart, it just got held back by the string in between the knots, that's bouncy. What if you have flax in a bundle? A tied bundle is very, very hard. But the high gisa with the high gisa loy chashin. Now, how would I describe the high gisa with the high gisa? Quite simply. Let's take a round cylinder, such as this. This is a round cylinder. If the bird hits it right at the top, head on, that's a very hard hit. But if the bird hits it towards the side, it'll bounce off to the sides. That wouldn't be such a hard hit, and therefore loy chashin. Weiter. Uh, Isuraisa chashino. Isuraisa, we will be concerned. What Rashi says, Isuraisa means a bundle of reeds. Again, it's a tight bundle. It's going to be very hard. How about kisna the daik v'nafetz? If you have flax, the way they would process it is they would smash it to break up the wooden stalks from the soft fiber, and they would comb out all the hard pieces of wood, and you're left with only soft fiber. If they fell into a pile of the soft fiber, it's almost like a mat that catches them. But daik v'nafetz, if the flax were only beaten, but they didn't comb out the hard parts from it, because once again it hits something hard. David Bizri, if it's made into a bundle, the way they would take these fibers, even if they were soft, when they were bundled together, they would twist them, and that would make it very hard, which the Gemara refers to as knots. The kata or daxa chashina, if the extra psilus that comes out of the it comes out of these flax when you comb them, there's some hard pieces. Those hard pieces, if the bird hits it, it's hard. But takda, which is very fine fiber pieces that are in a pile, that again forms a bit of a cushion, okay? Navra hashino. Navra, Rashi says, is something that grows around the tree. The article titled it as palm bast. And he says it's something that's in the bark of the tree and it's hard, but they make it into rope and they slice it into very thin slices, then they become soft. So therefore, navrat chashinon timchasa, once it's sliced into thin pieces to make the rope out of loy chashinon. Kitma nehila, if you have ash that you sifted, so now it's a hard medium, chashinon. Loy nehila, if it's just loose ash, that almost forms like a cushion, loy chashinon. Now we can turn on to daf nun beis omer aleph. Fine sand, loy chashin. Gas, thick sand, chashinon, that's hard. Ovak drachim, the earth from the ground that people are constantly stepping onto, hardens, chashinon. Tivna v'avid bizaga, if it's straw, but it's bundled. So then chashinon, that's hard. Loy avid bizaga, just a pile of straw, loy chashinon. Chiti, wheat kernels, and similar to wheat kernels that are very hard. Chashinon, sari barley, which are softer kernels, and everything similar. Chashinon, you're also chashish. No, so barley is also a problem. Kol mini kidneys, any type of kidneys, ein bahen mishum risuke eva. They don't have the problem of risuke worm, they're soft. Lavar in Rubio, except for something called fenugreek or fena something, I don't know what it is, the article defines it. Chimtzi, legume, peas, green peas that are perfectly round. Ein boy mishum risuke evarim. Because if you jump into a pile of peas, they all move away around you. Similar to if you go to an entertainment center for children, they have these big vats of little balls that kids could jump into from high up. And the balls cushion the blow because as you fall into them, they split apart because they're all round. But chickpeas, because chickpeas aren't perfectly round, they have flatter surfaces, pointer surfaces, and therefore we're concerned about risk evarim. So the general rule is kol mila de mashrik, anything that slides and slips away from each other, like balls, ein boy mishum risk evarim. But loy mashrik, if they have hard flat surfaces, yesh boy mishum risk evarim, there we're going to be concerned. Dabuk, what happens if a bird ends up flying into a glue trap, and now its wings don't work well, and as they try to jump off a high plane, they just fall to the floor and go bang because they can't fly because their wings are stuck to this glue trap. So Zok Gemara Rabashi Shari. Rabashi holds that this is not Rishuk Evarim, because the bird, even with its wings in a blue trap, still could move enough to soften the blow. And a memar also. Bechad Gapa, if only one wing is stuck in the trap, everybody holds that that's not Rishuk Evarim, the bird will be able to soften its blow. If both wings are stuck in this blue trap, Manda Asar, the person who holds its Asar, Amulach, Heichinekum, how's it going to move? How's it going to protect itself? Manda Shari Amulach, Esher the Nekima Ikvideka. Even a little part of the wing that's not stuck to the trap will be enough to soften the blow. Okay, Gavaltik. Zog to Gemara Viter. Ikadami betray Gapi Kulam Lepli. The both wings are trapped. Everybody holds the animal is considered Murusak Evorim. Keep Ligi Bechad Gap. On the Shori Amulach Efsher the Parach Bechad Gapa. You can fly with one wing. On the Osar keeping the Bahai Matzi Parach. Since one wing is immobilized, Bahinami Loy Matzi Parach. The other wing won't work well either. The Hilchazahara with Paskin, betray Gapi Asir. If both wings are immobilized, the bird's going to hit the ground hard. The Chad Gap, if only one wing is immobilized, the other wing works, then Shari, the animal, is mutter because, yes, it will fall, but it'll the one wing flopping will act like a parachute and soften the blow. Rashi fears Zois. So we had the Maskana when it comes to the Shaila of Rishuk Evarim, that if the animal can get up and walk, then you're allowed to shecht it and there's no issue whatsoever. If the animal can't move, then you're not allowed to shecht it for 24 hours. And if you shecht it within 24 hours, no badika will help the animal's treif. But if the animal stood up but didn't walk, or put its feet in the ground, different movements that would show some level of strength, then you could shecht it right away, but you have to thoroughly be boidik it for any internal damage. Zok de Bahag, that Rashi quotes, that we're not Bekiyim nowadays in assessing damage, to find nuanced damage that would render the animal treifah due to the fact that that has Marusak Evarim, its body got banged up. And therefore we have to be mach. Zok Rashi Chas Shalom. Of course, Ein L'dain Elamashin of Royos, we have Dayanim and Gedolim today that we could rely on, and as long as they do their homework properly, and they consult with experts, both butchers and maybe veterinarians, and they do their due diligence, and they thoroughly investigate the issue, the avada, we could rely on them to be matir a marusak evor. Zok the Gemara weiter. Nishtabru roiv tzloisa. If roiv, the ribs of an animal, broke, it makes it into a treif. This is a little bit complex, so we have to help couple. Tanarabban. Eilein roiv tzlois. Now we know an animal has 13 ribs on either side, but we're only counting 11 on each side because 2 of the ribs don't have marrow in them, aren't as big ribs as the others. Now there is a little bit of a shaila in the Rishonim. What are the ribs? Is it 1 through 11, or maybe it's 2 through 12? The 11 ribs that are critical, that are negated to the sugya, are they 1 through 11 or 2 through 12? I think most Hoiskemold is 2 through 12. So let's see what it says. This is what roiv tzalois means. It means sheish mikan and v'sheish mikan. It means either if 6 on either side were broken, which means 12 out of 22, or even if it's a total of 12, but there's 11 on one side and only 1 on the other side, that's also nishtabru roiv tzalois, that would make an animal a treif. Now, if the rib breaks towards the stomach area, further away from the source, from the spinal cord, we're not concerned. That we're talking about, broken ribs, rendering an animal treifah, is only if the top half of the rib closest to the spine broke. We're only referring to the large ribs that have moyach, and that's why we're discounting 2 ribs out of the 13 ribs. Amar Ula, Ben Zakkai Amar, Ben Zakkai said, and Rashi says, this is definitely not Rabbi Yochanan Ben Zakkai, so he doesn't know which Ben Zakkai this is. Amar, he said, Nekru Beroiv Stad Echad, if the ribs got totally ripped out of the socket in the spinal cord that they're connected to, then even if roiv of tzarechot, meaning even if only 6 were uprooted, that would render the animal treifa. But nishtabru, but if the ribs broke, like we discussed earlier, you require beroiv shnei tzadin, meaning you need a total of 11, a total of 12 that had to have been broken. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Bein nekru, bein nishtabru, beroiv shnei tzadin. Rabbi Yochanan's mekel, and he said, unless you have roiv of both sides, which would mean 6 on one and 6 on the other, it wouldn't be a treif. Omar Rav said, Nekra tsela b'chol yoim. What if not only if the rib was ripped out, the vertebrae on the spine also was ripped out. Now, if you think about it, if the rib on one side is ripped out and the vertebrae is ripped out, the other side rib has nothing anymore left to be connected to. So really the other rib is not really connected either. And that's going to come into play shortly. So Amarav, Nekrat Sela Vichol Yoima Treifa. That will be a treifa, even if only one has happened to. Omaler of Kahana of Rabasi L'Rav. What would be, they asked Rav a following question. Nekrat Sela Mikan, V'Sela Mikan. What if the rib on either side got ripped out, but V'Cholia Kayems, but the actual vertebrae is still in place. Just the 2 ribs on either side got ripped out. Now, what would be the halacha? Amalu, he told them, Gistira Kamrisu. Not only is that a treva, that's an avela. Once the animal is split in half because you ripped out the 2 ribs on either side, that makes it into an avela. Now, this is a very troublesome sock because Frek Gemara, Rav Nami Gistira Kamar. Rav's case was when you pulled out 1 rib and a vertebrae went missing with it. Rav said it's a treifa. So how could Rav tell them it's a gister or it's an avela? His case is the very same case. What's the difference if you ripped out 2 ribs on the side, or if you ripped out 1 rib and the vertebrae, which automatically renders the other rib useless? So why would Rav call his case a treifa? Yet he refers to the case that was brought to him by Rav Kahana and Ravasi as a gister, as an avela.
I must have missed something. Doesn't a novella have to be dead?
No, there are certain times where you say an animal is considered a novella even before it's dead. And one of the cases we had was gistera. If you chop a behemoth in half, even though it's still alive for a couple of minutes, it already takes on tumus novella at that time. So there were scenarios where even the animal's alive, but for all practical purposes, its wound is going to kill it instantly. It's considered already a tumus nevela now.
Okay.
And Gistera was one of the examples. So Frek Gemara, I don't understand why is Rav commenting that Rav Kahana and Rav Asi's case was a Gistera. Rav Nami Gistera Kamar. Zok Gemara, maybe not. Kika Marav Sela Beloichud. Maybe when did Rav say it's a treifa that if it's only 1 rib got ripped out from the vertebrae, but the vertebrae was still intact. That's when he said it was treifa. Frankly, more, but that's not what the Rav said. Rav specifically said, "Vatsela vichul yokama." Rav said, if the tzela with the vertebrae is missing, it's a treifa. But Rav commented on Rav Kahana, on Rav Asi's case, that's a gistera. He passed already that it's only a treifa. Zok to Gemara, tzela v'chatzichum. Maybe what Rav meant is the rib on the right side, let's say, was ripped out, and a portion of the vertebrae on the right side that right rib connected to was ripped out as well. But the vertebrae still was around, the other half of the vertebrae was still there to connect to the other rib. So that's not a gistera, because only 1 rib is missing, the other rib is still there. That's where he said it was treifa. But on Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, where both ribs are pulled out, that's where he considered it a gistra. Furthermore, you cannot say that. Because Mechlal Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, Sela B'loy Cholya. You're telling me Rav Kahana and Rav Asi are speaking where the rib got ripped out, but the Cholya is still in place, Amri? And V'amalu Gistra Kamrisu? And he called that a gistra. So both ribs on the right side and on the left side are ripped out, but the chulya is intact. Are you telling me that that's where Rav said that that's called a gistra? It shouldn't be a gistra, and I'll prove it to you that it can't be a gistra. Not only is it not a gistra, it's kosher. Because the Amar Ula said, and Zakai Amar Nekru Baroiv Tzad Echad Nishtabru Baroiv Shnei Tzad. So Nekri need roiv of tzad echad, not just one. Amalach, maybe hasam zeh shaloi keneged zeh. When did the Zakar say that you need roiv? That's if you don't have in one point a rib ripped out on both sides. On one side it's these ribs, on the other side it's the other one. Zok the Gemara, but hacha zeh keneged zeh. The question of Rav Kahana and Rav Asi was both ribs coming out of that same vertebrae. That's worse. Freit Gemara, but that's not true. Because the Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan said, even if a rib is completely pulled out of the vertebrae, you still need Rav Shnei Tzad. Now we know there's 11 ribs that are in play on either side. If you have 6 on each side, it's impossible that at least one won't match. So if that's the case, why would Rabbi Yochanan say you need Rav Shnei Tzad? It's enough if only one matches. It's going to be a gistra. If you're going to have 6 on either side, at least one of them is missing. The vertebrae would be missing the rib on either side. So if that's the case, then you see from Rabbi Yochanan, in fact, that cannot be a gistra. Because Rabbi Yochanan holds only with roiv is treifa, but one missing on either side wouldn't even be a treifa. Zok the Gemara, so I'll tell you what the case is. Hasam buchna v'lo yasisa. Rabbi Yochanan is speaking where the rib is ripped out, but the vertebrae is perfectly intact. Hacha, the shaila that Rav Kahana and Rav Asi asked were buchna v'asisa, where the vertebrae was not intact. So, and that's why it's a gistra. But for the Gemara, ihachi hainu de Rav. That's exactly the same case of Rav. Rav said the one rib was missing and the vertebrae was missing, and then by definition the other vertebrae was going to be loose. Well, if that's how you're learning, if that's how you're going to learn, is the case of the shaila of Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, where part of the vertebrae is missing, so that's exactly the same shaila as Rav. So why would they ask Rav a shaila about part of a vertebrae missing when Rav himself said already that it's going to be a treif? Zot Gemara, maybe the reason why Rav Kahana and Rav Asi posed this question to Rav is lo shamilu to Rav. Maybe they didn't hear Rav say that Allah. So therefore, in fact, the shaila that they asked, that both ribs are missing and part of the vertebrae is missing, really that is the same shaila that Rav cleared, with only one rib missing, but the vertebrae is missing. But they didn't hear Rav say this shaila, and therefore they raised it to him. And he passed in Gistra. Zok to Gemara, v'liboy minei kidarav. So if they didn't hear Rav's psak, then they should have asked Rav's question, where one rib and a vertebrae was missing. Why did they ask him a shaila when both ribs are missing? V'liboy minei kidarav. Zok to Gemara, summary, they thought as follows. Liboy minei chada the porish lontarti. Let's ask a shaila that from the answer that Rav gives us, we'll know the answer to both. So the two shailas here is one rib missing and part of the vertebrae, or 2 ribs missing and part of the vertebrae. We'll ask about 2 ribs missing, because from his answer, we'll be able to figure out what's the halacha if only 1 rib is missing. And how do you get it? If we asked him the shaila, if only 1 rib is missing, if he passes that it's treifa, then sure, I'll know that kol shekei tarti, if both ribs are missing, it's surely treifa. The problem is, what if Rav paskins that it's kosher? Akarti tarti kami boilam. I still will not know the halacha of if two ribs are missing, if it's going to be treif or not. But if I ask him about two, then I'll know. Frankly, how will you know? The kaboy mine tarti, even though you're going to ask him, what if two ribs are missing? That all makes sense. If he tells you kshera, so therefore you could say, if even two ribs are missing, it's kshera. Surely if only one rib is missing, it will be kosher. But the amalu treva, if he passes for you treva, which in fact he did, he said gistera, akati chadami boilu. You still don't know what would be the halacha if only one rib is missing. So to Gemara, yes, I would know. Because if in fact the halacha is that if one rib was missing, when we asked him the shaila about two ribs, he would have got frustrated. And he would have said, why are you asking me about two ribs? Even one rib, if it's missing, is the treif. So that was their cheshbon, not necessarily by the words that their Rebbe uses, but by his tone. If they ask him, is two treif, and he says, of course it's treifa, then you understand that even one is treifa. But if he just answers calmly, yes, it's treifa, then you would assume that two ribs missing is treifa, while one rib missing is not treifa. So Zok Gemara, Akati Chadami Bailu, Savri Imkain Mirsus Karasach. And he would say, Chada, Treva, Tartami Boy. Frank Gemara, but the problem is that this is the shayla that they asked. They asked him about two ribs. He didn't get angry. He just said Gistera. Zok Gemara, that's exactly the sign. Kivin de Kamalu Gistera Kamrisu. Since he says, what are you asking me about a Gistera for? That shows frustration. So therefore, they could have figured out that if one rib alone was missing, that would have also been a treifa. I mean, one rib alone missing with some of the vertebrae, and we would have known that it's a treifa. Because Rav told him, Sharfalosh, it's a gistra by two. So that means even one would also be a treifa. Gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. Amar Rabba bar Avshila, Amar Rabmasna, Amar Shmuel. Nekra tzelamekar. What if a rib got totally uprooted from its source, ripped out of the socket in the vertebrae? Or a skull that was softened because it was smashed, roiv of it was softened. And the meat that covers the roiv hakeres, beruba, if roiv of that meat was sliced, treifa will be a treifa. Frank the Gemara, let's analyze this price. Your first case was nekra tzelame kar as a treifa. Or a mini. I'm going to have a kasha for you. Let's turn over onto the base. We had a shaila before about tumas oil, a full shedra. If it's intact of a human, it's metama oil. How much of the shedra would have to be missing that the shedra is no longer metama oil? He says lakula. In order for it not to be metama oil, it would have to be missing two vertebrae. Even if it's missing only one vertebrae, it's no longer going to be tamei ba'oil. If you just said in the name of Shmuel that the same halacha applies, l'treifa. So what do you see? You see if even one cholya is missing, according to Beis Hillel, it's going to be a treifa. So the kasha is, according to Beis Hillel, it'll be treifa if one cholya is missing. So you see, according to Shmuel, Akiras Cholya, who the treifa v'loya Akiras Tzela. Shmuel says if a Tzela came out, that's going to make it a treifa. It's not true. Only if the vertebrae comes out will it be a treifa. Zakta Gemara, not a problem. Hacha Tzela v'loy Cholya. What Shmuel's talking about, if the rib came out but the Cholya is intact, that's a treifa. And Hasam Cholya v'loy Tzela. And Shmuel's halacha was if the chulya is missing, but not the tela. So it's one without the other. Each one is a separate halacha that it would be a treifa. So tomorrow, b'shlemet tzalya b'lachulya. I understand how you could pull the tzela out without pulling out the chulya. Mishkachas and the chulya b'latzela. How could you possibly uproot and take out the vertebrae and not have the tzela dislodged? There's no if the tzela, if the rib connects to the chulya and there's no chulya there, so obviously the tzela is pulled out. So if tomorrow b'shili kafli, maybe when we're talking about the vertebrae missing, we're talking about where there's no ribs. The vertebrae, the spine is much longer than just the area where the ribs are connected to it. So maybe this discussion of chuliachas missing is a treifa that's referring to a part of the spine where there are no ribs. We know that usually Beis Hillel is mekel, and the Mishnah lists off the limited cases where Beis Hillel is mekel, where Beis Hillel is mach. Usually Beis Hillel is mekel. Now here by Hilchos Treifus, Beis Hillel is actually machmer, because he also, if even one chulya is missing, the animal is going to be a treifa. So why wasn't this listed as one of the prominent occasions where Beis Hillel is machmer? Amalei Rav told him, I'll tell you what, because ki itchel le'inyan tuma itchel. When the question came up that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had their discussion about, the shaila came out le'inyan tuma. So the main machloikas that they had was le'inyan tuma, where Beis Hillel is mekel. Sure, as an outgrowth, as a byproduct of that machloikas, there's a case to where Beis Hillel will be machmer by treifus. But the core machloikas was by tuma v'tahira, and there Beis Hillel is machmer. Thank you. That's where Beis Shammai was looking. Next, you have a crushed, mushy skull. This is a very big discussion in the Rishonim what these means. We'll go with Rashi. Rashi learns the Golgola starts from right above the eyes and it goes up and around. So even if you have a strip, not a full width, but even a strip of his forehead that goes right the height to the point of the head that's smashed, that would be a treifa. Roiv Hekefa means you have a strip that's going around like a headband. That would be a treifa. There's also a discussion what Rabbi Yirmiyah meant. Did he meant either Roiv Gleiva or Roiv Hekefa, or does he mean you need Roiv Gleiva and Roiv Hekefa? And we're not sure, but we go take it either way. We're going to be mad. You have meat that covers the belly. That's after the rib cage closes in the belly. The rib cage holds in whatever's inside it. But once the rib cage ends, there's a piece of meat that goes from the end of the rib cage, from the sternum down all the way over to the hips, that seals in all of the guts. So that basar, if right of that basar got cut, it's going to be treifa. Barabashi, b'roiv karua or b'roiv not. When we say roiv, does that mean a slice that extends down the roiv? We'll make it a treifa, or only if it's removed, if the whole piece of meat is removed, the roiv of it. Let's see if we can bring it right. We did not. If the inner keres had a small hole, or roiv achitzaina was torn. The Omar b'Marava Mishmeid Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, Kol hakeres kula. Remember, we had a whole shiloh what this keres is, and one shita was that the entire stomach has to be removed in order for it to be possible by the keres hapnimi, zui keres hapnimi. So the keres hapnimi has to be beroy. It's not with a puncture. Vezo keres hachitzana. And the whole keres hapnimi with a small puncture will be a treifa, and it's only the keres hachitzani that you need the roiv to be torn. What is the keres hachitzani? If the whole keres is called keres hapnimi, what is called the keres hachitzani? Vezo keres hachitzana, basar hachayves roiv keres. That's that muscular piece of meat that covers over the belly, and that you need roiv. So you see from here that it's nikra roiv hachitzana. It only has to be torn it doesn't have to be removed. So you have a raya to our shayla. Zog the Gemara, midi hu taima el Shmuel. We are asking this shayla according to Shmuel, because this whole sugya started of with Basar Shachayfus Reva Keres that is a treifa. It's Shmuel's memory. So our shayla is according to Shmuel, and Shmuel didn't say that the Keres Achitzoni is Basar Hachayfus Reva Keres. That was Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina's pshat. Shmuel had a different pshat of it. Midiu time el Shmuel. Rabbi Yaakov bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel Mokum She'ein by Melas. Rabbi Yaakov bar Nachmani said in the name of Shmuel that how do you know what the Keres of Pnimi is? The Keres of Pnimi, which is even Nika b'Mashu, is where there's no hairs. There's like hairs inside the stomach. So he doesn't hold of this whole Sikul Yudish proof, and therefore you don't have a raya according to Shmuel if the treifa of Roif Hachitzani means merely it being severed or sliced, or if it means being totally removed. Drew says as a we know that if as a put its nails into treifa. If it's a large behema, then anything bigger than a za'ev would be rendered a treifa, but a za'ev itself would also render a larger animal into a treifa. But if we're talking about a bird, that could be damaged with a much lighter type of predator. Net is an eagle or a hawk. I'm not sure exactly what a net is. There's a discussion about it. So when Rav said, what was he trying to tell us? If he was just trying to tell us that by behema, anything smaller than a za'ev, such as a cat, would not render a treifa, I don't need Rav to tell me that. Our Mishnah already told me that. Tanina udrusas haza'ev. The drusas haza'ev will make it treifa, and not a chasur. And if you want to tell me that the chiddush of Rav is the zev, no, if you want to say that the chiddush of the Mishnah when it says udrusas haza'ev is to tell you that the zev begasa nami doris, that a zev, you might think that in the behema gasa you need something bigger than a wolf, you need a lion. And the Mishnah is telling us that a ze'ev will also cause a treifa in a behema gasa, but not to tell me that a chassul can't do a treifa, and you need Rav to tell you that a chassul will not make a treifa. But that's not true, because what Tanan Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Jerusas has a ev b'daka, or Jerusas ari b'gasa. In fact, the Jerusas has a ev will not work on the behema gasa. It would only work on the behema daka. So that can't be what the Mishnah is telling us, is that the Jerusas has a ev would even damage a behema gasa, because it's simply not true. And if you're going to tell me it's only Rabbi Yehuda who said that as a ev will not impact the behema gasa, but maybe the Mishnah argues on Rabbi Yehuda, and that's who Rav holds like, that the Ze'ev will be able to make a behema gasa treifa. You can't say that, because the Amar Rabbi Yoma bar Yefes Amar Loi bar Rabbi Yehuda Elo Lefar Shivei Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda is not arguing. Rabbi Yehuda is explaining the Chachamim. Meaning there's no machlokes. Means everybody agrees that as an Ev cannot make a behema gasa treifa. Zogt Gemara Gavar Karamas. We're talking about Rav, and you're bringing me a Rav from Rabbi Elazar. Maybe Rav argues on Rabbi Elazar, and maybe Rav holds that the Tanakama argues on Rabbi Yehuda, and the Tanakama holds, in fact, that a Zev could cause a tarfus in the behema gasa, and Rav's chiddush is that a chassul cannot. So that's one teretz. Let's say that the Mishnah is telling us that a chassul cannot make a treifa. So what do I need Rav for? I need Rav for the following. Maybe really even a chassul could make a treifa. The reason why the Mishnah chapped on Ze'ev is because normally that's who does the damage. Normally it's the wolves who do damage, not cats. Kamash Malon, that when the Mishnah Ze'ev, it's daf. Amar Abamam Amar Chisda. Drusas chasul, if a chasul makes a drusa, or a nemaya, nemaya is a smaller type of animal. I'm not sure if it's a cat-like animal or if it's in the sheretz family. There's a discussion, but I don't know if the article says in English what a nemaya is. But it's a smaller predator.
The article doesn't translate it.
Okay, so it's a smaller type of animal. Bigedim utloim. They could hurt very small animals. A gedi is a goat plus a small sheep. Very small animals. Even a chsul and a moya could make a trade. And druzas cholda, which is even smaller than that, the weasel is ba'ifais. They can hurt birds. Meisvei. The Braisa says druzas chasul nets unamoya. If a chasul or a net or namoya makes a drusa, the only way it will make an animal treifa is if it punctures the heart of its prey up until the halal, which is no different than any other needle. Meaning there's no special din drusa. They're just like any other puncture. Avol drusa leslu. So how could Reb Chista say that drusa's chol namoya will work? We see clearly they don't have any poison, and it's only if they puncture the heart. First of all, we have a problem with this brisa. Nets like dars. How could the brisa that we just quoted say that a net won't make a drusa? Our Mishnah says that it does, but not a drusa nets. Zakmar, that's not a kash. Hole kasha kan ba'oifa is kan big diem. The brisa that we just quoted that says the drusa of a net doesn't work. That's on an animal. Our Mishnah that says the drusa of a net does cause damage. That's on a bird. But Mikalmokan or Bechista Kasha, because Bechista said that the drusa of the Chusul and the Moya will impact a Gedina Tlef, yet this Brisa seems to say that it won't. Let's say Reb Chista is going according to a different Tana that argues on this Brisa. The Tanya Baribi, I remember Baribi said, Loi Amr ein drusa. You know when we say there's no drusa for these little animals? El b'makam she'en matil. That's when the cat feels unchallenged. It's not aggravated. It's unchallenged. Therefore, it's not going to swipe its prey with such vengeance. It's calmer, and therefore there would not be a drusa, and therefore the Brisa says until the heart is punctured. But if there's people that are rescuing the prey, that aggravates the predator, when yes drusa, then its swipe will actually inject poison. Are you telling me that an animal that's not challenged, a cat that's not challenged, will not be a drusa? I'll tell you a story that proves you wrong. There was a chicken that was being chased, the Roid Chasul Basra, was being chased by a Chasul, and nobody intervened. But the chicken itself ran to escape. But all the druna, it ran into a room, and the chicken slammed the door in front of the cat, so the cat couldn't get in, and it escaped. The cat got so aggravated that the door was slammed in its face, and it couldn't grab the chicken, and the cat swiped the door with his claw, and they found 5 drops of blood on it, meaning the venom that would have come out of the claws of the cat. There, nobody was protecting the chicken. The chicken was on its own. And you still see that it excreted poison. Zakta Gemara, that's also an aggravating factor. If the cat doesn't face resistance, that's when it won't secrete venom. But if it faces resistance, whether it's from a protector or because the chicken got away and defended itself, that would aggravate the cat, that it would secrete venom. The Rabbanon who held that it won't be a treva ever. So the Gemara, yet you see over here that even the chasul will make treva because we see the venom. So the Gemara, Zahira Islay v'lekol ziri. Yes, venom will come out of a cat, but that venom is not potent enough to cause any damage. Ikadami, we have another way we could find for a chista. And we could say, Hamani beribi. Let's say that the brisa that says that it won't make a drusa, that's beribi. The Tanya beribi Aimer lo Amr yesh drusa el b'makam sheyesh matzilin. Of a makam she'ein matzilin, ein drusa. And the brisa is speaking b'makam she'ein matzilin, and we would say Reb Chis is going according to a different Tana who holds that even b'makam she'ein matzilin there will be a drusa. And the Rabbanan argue. Zok to Gemara, but we have a problem. So I'm on the Beribi, the Tanya Beribi, so now the Gemara asks the same question as we asked before. On Beribi, how could you make a distinction and say B'makam Shema Tzilin in Jerusalem? We had the story about Hitar Negolos Avoy Berev Kana, the Rot Chasol Basra, V'olim Druna, V'syach Edasha Abba, U'machil Edasha B'sichluvei, V'shtach Chalei Chamisha Kortidama. So tomorrow, the same terrace as before. When the cat faces resistance, whether it's from the chicken itself or whether it's from other people that are intervening, that aggravates the cat, that'll make it excrete venom. We were zoicha to finish Daf Nun Beis, and tomorrow, by Hashem, we will learn Daf Nun Gimel.
Yes,